grab your snacks. The show's about to start. Well, good morning and good afternoon and good evening. Shabbat Shalom. So I hope y'all grab your snacks, your drinks, your hot chocolate, because it is cold over here, cold and rainy in Jerusalem. And I'm pretty sure I know in Texas it's cold and rainy, or it's just cold. So hopefully, everybody grab your blankets and put your socks on. We're going to have a good time in the Lord. Thank you for joining us. And those who are coming on, please click the like, subscribe, and the notification bell. And we are glad you're here and you made it. So we will turn it over to our team because I don't have much to say. So not at this moment. So, but I am going to turn it over. I just thank God that we are able to be here and we're making progress where we're at. I'm getting ready to pack up and get ready to go to another location eventually. So thank you for joining us. Shabbat Shalom.
You know, Julian, have you ever had a phone conversation with her where she didn't have much to say?
Not really.
I was going to say, because she's kind of goofy. What people don't realize is Stacy's absolutely crazy. And she has a tremendous personality and such a realistic person. Stacy by birth. You were supposed to make the announcement of what this message was going to be called. You totally flew right over the cuckoo's nest on that one, girl.
And that is by birth. Crazy by birth.
Do you want to say it or do you want me to? You know, Julie, it's going to be interesting when everybody is in the same room and people can see what's really going on behind the scenes. They will probably laugh their head off. How can we go from being crazy to being serious? It's just like breathing. This is called conviction versus preference. Now, these are two words that I guarantee you by the time this class is over, you're going to know what it means. Poor Julian, I feel sorry for you because you get briefed just a few hours, if you're fortunate, before I actually start teaching. But don't feel bad because I never know what I'm going to teach when I start either. So you should feel pretty good. At least you got a heads up. So tell me, Julian, what did you think about conviction versus preference? You were reading the definitions and so forth. Let's start with that.
I think it's one of the. I mean, those two are very important because, especially conviction, because people seem to think of convictions as just something religious or stuff like that, but it doesn't have to be that. I mean, it could be anything in your life that you have real strong stance on, that you're going to take a stance on whatever belief or opinions you have or anything like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a religious stand or religious conviction. It could be anything in your life. You will, I guess, real strong, that you think real strongly of.
Conviction is something you don't waver. From the time all of my life that I can remember, I have never allowed drinking, smoking, and drugs in my house or in my presence. Never allowed that. And to this day, I will not allow that. Now, if I have a conviction, that means there's no wiggle room. There's no, you consider the individual, consider the situation. No, I do not believe in partaking in these things. And because I don't believe it, I won't allow it. That's a conviction, something that cannot be changed. My love for my son is a conviction. Hey, there's times I prefer that he wasn't my son in his life, but I've never kicked him to the curb and never thrown him out with the bathwater. I knew that one day God would get a hold of him, and he has. The thing that amazes me is that when we have conviction, we set ideas that we will not change on. Now, I want to bring a few of them up to you. I have a very strong conviction about fidelity and being faithful to the one that you've committed your life to. I do not believe that you fall out of love. I do not believe you just decide you want to be engaged with somebody else. I have a conviction that when you stand at that altar and you make a promise and a vow before God and all the witnesses, that you will keep your word to honor, love, cherish. And this includes being faithful till death do us part. If one party decides to be unfaithful and the other doesn't, Should that party forgive them and go on? Well, I've lived in a different situation all through many years, and I'm going to tell you this. Once a person jumps the fence to go play in another yard, they will never be faithful. They will never be faithful. When you make a commitment to an individual, it is, I'm committed to them. I have no wandering eyes. I have no desire to talk with the opposite sex. I don't want anything to do with this mentality. When you look at an individual who says, well, it's just texting, I'm just texting a guy friend, I'm texting a girlfriend, skip it. When you're committed in a relationship, the only communication you need with the opposite sex, other than a work situation that might require it, is to your husband or to your wife. Throw the texting out the window. Get rid of that texting that guy friend or that girlfriend. They're not a part of your life, and you don't need a possibility of a stumbling block or to be falling flat on your face. These types of interactions create a very hostile environment. Jealousies, distrust. We have a cell phone at our disposal. Almost every person on the planet has a cell phone. And I'm going to say that was the greatest device that Satan used to trick mankind, and their compromising became so easy. When I speak of making a commitment, I made a commitment when I married my husband, and I told him till death do us part, and I kept that commitment. My first husband did not keep that commitment. And under that time frame, we were never told what to do about that. The church was so against adultery that there was not any teaching on it. So consequently, what I never knew was when he begged to come back and give him another chance, hey, that's a lie. They will never get it right. If they don't prove to get it right in the beginning, don't open that door and say, honey, I'll take you back. Just do what's right. Because they're going to find in about 6 weeks, they're going to fall right back off and do the very same thing they did before. My husband had been deceased for a number of years before I found out that during our marriage, he had 5 different affairs. I knew of 2 of them, but I didn't know there were 5 of them. And when I would go and consult the pastor at the time, they would not tell me to get out of the marriage, that this was going to just blow up in my face. I didn't have a foundation of a family support, our close loved ones, our close friends that would look to me and say, this is a hopeless situation. You might as well call it quits and get out. I stayed through the very end. I regret that. I regret that because I would have spared my children and myself from physical, mental, and sexual abuse. I would have spared my children from mental anguish if I had just been told, get out. Close the door. Don't just close it, nail it shut. Make sure that it's padlocked and it's locked and put a steel plate on it. Don't open that door, because the deceiver will deceive you again and again and again and again. So I have a conviction not to be on the internet, on any form or fashion, texting, except I'm talking with my staff, or talking to anyone except when I'm talking to my staff. Those outside of my staff, I don't deal with. Because of who I am, I'm not going to have you or anybody else making an accusation that I said something or did something. I do not normally post anything on Facebook except for current events or food issues. I don't put my personal business out there. So whoever wants to say it's there, they're lying. When I teach you, I'll bring out personal business. But recently, we started locking the channel down after so much. Now, I've left this channel open for the last few weeks, and I may continue to do so. But at some point in time, if I see it necessary to lock it down, I will. In my place of leadership, I've been approached by the opposite sex and even the same sex, making passes and innuendos and statements that are completely out of character, and they're wrong. These people are just trying to pry their way into your life and cause you heartache. So number 1 today, get a conviction in your heart that you will not, and I repeat, will not be texting the opposite sex. You don't need that. And you don't need that in your relationship. If you have somebody who says, I don't want to give up that friendship, then their love is not true. You need to look at this as it really is. Now, when someone has been unfaithful, I had a problem with this, Julian, and I'm going to tell you why. I remember when I was molested as a late teenager. And at first, the ministry stood kind of divided. Some stood, some didn't with me. But what I found out that the very two that I thought was standing with me eventually conceded and started fellowshipping with the man who was the sexual abuser. Now imagine what a frustration and disappointment that was. When somebody has abused someone physically, mentally, spiritually, sexually, or any way, why would you want to be friends with them? Why would you give them another opportunity after what they did to you and your loved one? Why would you do that? Get a conviction. Set your standard. I'm not going to change that. You violated my mother. And this is what happened in my case when I was growing up. My dad violated my mother. And I should have said, no more. I'll have nothing more to do with you. I will have nothing. Because you see, there was no consequence. It didn't seem to matter what he said and what he did. He just had this very evil thing about him. Now, I'm going to say this as a woman of mature age and wisdom. Don't give them another chance. My dad had 18 years of my life to be given a chance. He violated the marriage between him and my mother. And consequently, that should have been the door shut. But again, we weren't taught about those things. You see, the more we compromise, the more we look at sin as, oh, it's not a big deal. It's okay. It doesn't really offend God, does it? Now, Julian, would you like to say something in regards to this section before I go on?
Yes, two things. One is like after a certain age, we know right from wrong. So the thing about doing something wrong, whenever the first time you're going to do something wrong, you feel it. You feel that, there you shouldn't do it because it's wrong. So you just, yes, I should do it. Maybe I shouldn't do it. Stuff like that. So you better with yourself, but you ultimately do it. So that's what you're talking about, being unfaithful. Same thing here. Once you do it the first time, you do something wrong the first time, the second time it gets easier. So the same thing here, it applies. I mean, if somebody does that, they're going to do it again. Why? Because the second time it gets easier. You just said you were reluctant the first time, but not the second time. It won't be. And the thing about also that, to me, the number one thing is trust in a relationship. If I don't have 100% trust in that person, I'm not going to be with that person. I'm just not. It has to be totally 100% trust. So when that trust is broken in infidelity, that's it. It's over with. There's nothing to go back to. Even if you really want to really forgive that person, whatever, that trust is broken. So he just is never going to be the same. So why go back to that where it's not going to be the same?
I remember you saying it when you and Stacy first met and got together, that you stressed to her that was the deal breaker between her and you, is if trust wasn't present, then there was no future. This is extremely important. If an individual violates another person and you know about it, are you not condoning it by overlooking what they've done? Are you that desperate for friendship that you would overlook what they've done? Are you that concerned about what people say about you? I would be more concerned about what God says about me. How does God view this? Scripture states out, you will not commit adultery and fornication. But today's society, it's like, well, we're dating so we can have sex. No, that's not true. If you make your foundation, don't wiggle out of it. Now, you'll end up with a lot of guilt and conviction, and you won't want to be around certain people because you feel uncomfortable. But that's not what I'm getting at here. Allow the conviction of God to convict you and repent. Turn away and don't do that anymore. But don't put yourself in an I do situation for any marriage the rest of your living life together. And know that there's issues that are not resolved. Address those issues now before you ever say I do. Make sure you understand each other completely before you say I do. You know, when my dad and my mom first split up, my dad wanted me to meet his girlfriend, which eventually married her. But I remember the first day I met her. We were in the kitchen, and there was a bay window inside the kitchen. And Dad walked up and he said to me, "Who does she remind you of?" And I said, "I don't know." No, look, who does she remind you of? And I said, "Dad, seriously, I don't know. Who are you thinking of?" He said, "Doesn't she remind you of your mother?" And I said, "No, absolutely not." Now, he had had an affair and was looking at her as reminding him of my mother. Now, that's really twisted. And if you're watching, this is the truth and the reality, you don't ever have to watch again. The fact remains, what he did was wicked and vile. And then to think he could put my mother in this person was wrong. It's very wrong. You see, I felt an allegiance to my mother because at that point in time, she was not the guilty party. She eventually did become a guilty party, but in a different scenario. The point I'm getting at is when you know that the person has been violated, don't you dare go back and be friends with them and forgive them and look over it and let's say, give them another chance. To hell with it and them. No chances. You violated a sacred relationship. And for any child, grandchild, great-grandchild to come and befriend the individual who did you wrong only means they're not true to you. Now think about that. How much it would hurt to know that you went and embraced somebody who did evil and wicked. This is what I'm talking about: conviction, loyalty, love, dedication. These things must be in your character. So when I look at this and you go become a part of that person's life, aren't you killing the one that you say you love? Aren't you destroying them? Aren't you doing things that would devastate them? Where is your true allegiance? If God hates something, then why don't you? Did you hear what I said? If God hates something, why don't you? I would block them, shut them down, and not have another thing with them. That's one thing I have to say I love about Stacy. Stacy has a zero tolerance for stupidity. So they cross me or hurt me or anyone in the family, she's blocked them, shut them down, and that's it. She's learned how to swipe left. I think she's learned how to block. You don't need to have my number. You don't need to talk to me. You've already said all you're going to do. So I'm saying this in retrospect to all relationships. Have a conviction and ask yourself, why would I need to have the fellowship of that one that was evil toward my loved one? Evil. You can say, well, that's your opinion. No, that's a fact. They're evil and they're wicked. Now, why am I bringing this preference versus conviction? Because there's more than one issue we're bringing up in this. When we prefer something, it's like, I love cherries. I just think cherries are fantastic. But if cherries aren't available, I'll take strawberries. You see, those are my preferences. I have my favorite one I like, but my backup is the strawberries. And if I'm making ice cream, I just don't want plain vanilla. I want something with power and punch and flavor.
Can I insert something? I want to insert something. Let me flip the screen. Okay. You're talking about, people who condone, the action, the sin. You might as well say sin. And to me, I am one, if they've done any of people that I care about wrong, I'll be the first one to block, delete. So if you call and you can't get through, then it probably was you. But I feel that when people they come into your life and then they leave and then come back later and say all the negative and the trash that they can think of and they can speak of because of their own guilt. For me, I feel like when they contact me or it gets word to me, for me to be saying, "Oh, I'm gonna tell you what they said about you," it's like putting that knife in a little bit and turning it. So I don't. I mean, that's pretty much why people get blocked, and they believe their own lies and a number of other things. But I don't think that's not being some protective of those people that you care about. If someone was to say something negative to my husband, about my husband that has left our lives for a period of time and then they come back and say, well, this and that and other. Well, it didn't bother you at the time. Why didn't you say it then? So why wait a time period down the road to come back and say it? So I'm not going to go back and say, oh, I'm going to tell this is what they're talking about you behind your back. To me, that's just adding another knife print. And I'm just not one to be, you know, accessory to the crime. So that's it.
I like how you pointed that out. Why would I need to go tell somebody the evil that was said about you unless I intend to hurt you greater? There's maturity and there's immaturity. Unfortunately, this whole world doesn't have a knowledge of either and really doesn't comprehend it. But why would I go to Julian and say, Julian, I heard them say this and this and this and this and this about you? When I knew as a fact, it's a lie. Why don't I stop it and not go say, they said this about you, Julian. They said that about you, Julian. I am not perfect, but I'm striving every day to live the best life I can live that pleases God. Now, I'm going to let this rip in just a few minutes, but I'm laying a foundation and I want you to really listen to me because we're talking about choices, preference versus conviction. If you love somebody, you don't go back and say to them, oh, I just got to tell you what they said about you. And it's so funny. Unless you're really wanting to ask, did you really do that? In that case, just come out and say, did you really take that black car without permission? Don't tell them it's put it in somebody else said. If you have a question, ask it. I live a very open book for people see me 24/7, very little bit of privacy at all. But I can tell you this, and Stacy, Julian, and those who've been around me for any period of time can tell you, I live what I believe. I exemplify what I believe. There are people who've walked out of my life I do not want back in my life. Why should I allow you the next time to hurt someone that I love or myself? Now, when you're young and dumb, I can understand that to a degree. But once you come into the knowledge of not being so dumb, don't play stupid. That's a game that really doesn't need to be happening. Today, here in Israel, more hostages were released. The news that we get obviously is different than what you get. And the recent story about the mother and her two children who were killed on this October 7th event was horrific. It was terrible. But Julian, I got a question for you. Are they the only victims of this atrocity? Or are there others? Do you realize that the three the three main religions of the world, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, have the foundation of thou shalt not kill. That is the basic foundational principle in all three of those religions. Is there a difference between kill and murder? The answer is absolutely. I might be in an accident, a car overturned, and someone dies. It's killing. But if I go out and intentionally annihilate and destroy a people, that is deliberate murder, premeditated murder. We will and just because an individual does not believe the way I do, does not give me a permission to take a life. We have wars all over the world. Innocent people, being annihilated over and over and over again. Everything they possess is destroyed. I'm going to say this. Any leader of any nation that says they love God and allows war, may the may the wrath of God be upon your head. You sold the arms that killed them. You sold everything to destroy them. And there is no innocent party here. There is no innocent party here. Our lives should please Him who created us. He created all man. He did not create the divisions of man. United States says to Ukraine, unless you give us minerals out of your country, we're not going to help you. We're not going to give you any more arsenal. Are you not as evil as those you arm? Are you not as evil as those you arm? Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not destroy the lives of people. Here in Jerusalem, the focus is on October, is on October the 7th. But I'm going to say global. The situation is there's destruction and mayhem for political power gain and monetary. If I were a millionaire, a billionaire, or a trillionaire, and there was one party in this group that wanted to produce the arms that kills and annihilates, I would have nothing more to do with them. Is that not what happened to us as a world? God withdrew His Spirit because of the hostility and the anger and the animosity. Is that not what happened? My heart grieves for the citizens that did not vote for any war. And I'm strongly saying if that leader should be removed from office, if that is the type of mentality he has, oh, we're protecting ourselves. Excuse me. No, you're not. Do you think you'd be sending off these bombs that cost, oh my goodness, a lot of money if you had to pay for it? No. If it was your loved one on that battlefield, would you be supporting this for them to be annihilated? No. I'm sick and tired of hearing World War III is at the brink. We're in the midst of World War III. We're in the midst of a global pandemic of a lack of love. A lack of love for humanity and what God set into place. We are in a deep crisis worldwide. Worldwide. Let me be what you want me to be. And if you don't like being around me because I'm too holy, then just go your other direction. Because the way I look at it, he is holy. So therefore, I must align myself with his holiness. We cannot stand by and listen to the pro and the con, depending on what news radio you're listening to, because they're all biased to one way or another. There is no innocent party when it comes to war, when it comes to destruction. Find out what the grievance is. You don't need other countries to find that out. Sit down together, find out what the problem is, and resolve the issues. Resolve the issues. I am thankful that I was born in the United States of America. I'm thankful that my ancestors came from various parts of the globe. I can honestly say, Julian, I'm not a true blood anything. I'm a percentile of everything. But I'm more so 100% believe and trust in God. If you can say that your lineage comes from a specific area, well, that's great. I'm glad you can. And mine, I can't. He created all men equal. No greater, no less. Equal. And we come along with our preference. We have prejudices. It's horrible. My dad did not believe that I was a true pastor because I pastored in the first few years of my ministry a predominantly Black church. So therefore, I didn't qualify because I didn't have the right color in my church. And because I was a woman, well, dear old Dad, look at me now. I'm a woman of God with great conviction, and strong will I stand on that conviction. I want nothing evil around me. Those who stand before the mighty God must be pure in heart and have the attitude of repentance. He is holy, holy, pure, unadulterated. Oh, what a glorious God I serve. What a glorious God I serve. I've been doing some research, and I want to tie this into this because I feel like it's important. It seems like every day, several times throughout the day, we get reports of one thing being banned in our food industry and another and so forth. You know, the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, was supposed to have the oversight of our food. Now, to me, this is killing and murder, and somebody needs to be responsible. The red dye, number 40, has been known to cause ADHD and many other diseases. You can look these things up. Now, one of my candies that I enjoyed, can't say I ate a whole lot of them, but I can say I enjoy, was M&M's plain and peanut. On the peanut, I liked eating the outer shell and then eating the peanut. It's kind of a toy, I guess, to play with. But I haven't eaten any in a long time. And so as we were packing up this place, getting ready to go, I thought I've got 2 containers, probably about 2.5, 3 pounds each of plain and peanut M&Ms. And I'd been seeing this thing about the red dye 40. And I thought, I wonder if it's in the M&Ms. So I hooked up the big container, looked in there, it is red 40. And I thought, well, I guess I could pick out all the red ones and toss them in the garbage, destroy them. But what about these other colors? What numbers are they and what do they do? Will I just pitch the whole thing? The answer, Here's my point. Using this as a simple illustration, we trusted a group of people to oversee our agriculture and our food distribution. And they have poisoned us and made us ill. Coca-Cola, which owns Fanta and many others, is so full of poisons. But, that's our drink of choice, or Pepsi-Cola, that's our drink of choice. Look up the ingredients. They are deadly. Don't come to me down the road when there's no health insurance to cover these things and you're suffering immensely and need some type of relief. Don't you see the idea? They'll take you into that, causing you to be ill, giving you medication that really doesn't handle that. That causes another problem. And before you know it, you're very, very sickly. So when I'm talking about killing and murdering, when you serve these things on your table, or you ingest them without researching what you're eating and what you're drinking, you are committing a slow death. Isn't that the same as suicide? Isn't that the same as murder if I'm giving it to my loved ones? The internet is readily available to most all of us. Just type in the question. See what the situation is. You see, in the book of Revelation, it talks about a third of the world being wiped out. Julian, have you ever thought about the fact that our food, with the way that it's poisoned, one way to wipe out a third of the world? And why is there things in the United States that we eat that are not allowed in other countries? Doesn't that say something to you? You can't even bring them through an airport before they're out. We've got to take complete control of our life, spiritually, naturally, and be diligent and not just make excuses. Since I think it was the 26th, with me being a diabetic, I have stayed mostly to the low glycemic index diet. And I've had very, very, very minimal sugar. And I noticed that while we were packing up the place the last couple of days, my blood sugar was doing great. And I thought, that's what I need to do. I need to have a business where I'm moving around all the time. And I wouldn't fight as many issues. But what brought the diabetes on is the fact our poisons in our food. I didn't know that. I was very ignorant and not learned in it. But we need to stop and examine what we're ingesting, what we're drinking, what we're doing. Because if we want God to be number one in our life, then take control of your life. I can tell you, I love Dr. Pepper. I haven't had any in a long time. Very, very long time, years. I like root beer. Haven't had that in some time. But those are two drinks I'm not going to drink. The ingredients that I can't read does not mean there's something healthy. As I brought to your attention about a week or so ago when I talked about baby formula, how it had changed through history, and how now it wasn't just a few ingredients, there were 40 different chemicals into the baby powder formula. 40 different ingredients. And when you read them, it says not to be taken without doctor's advice, independently. But yet we poison our children from the time we give birth to them. I remember making my children's food because we couldn't afford the fancy little jars and all of that. So I just pureed it, blended up, and put it in little small containers. And that's how I fed children when they didn't have teeth and wasn't in the finger food yet. I was very diligent that I gave them what I thought was nutritious. But there were times have changed, and what was nutritious back then is not nutritious today. So you're killing your family by what you're preparing the food for. I know you look at this and you go, wow, did we go whoop, whoop, whoop. The most important part is that you got the message from God. We must have conviction and not preference. If anyone has violated your loved one, you don't go take them in and befriend them and give them another chance. You can say you lost your chances when you did this, and block, stop, and don't ever have anything to do with them again. Pretty simple, isn't it? Pretty simple. We're not here to win men's approval. We're here to do what God has commended us to do. Julian, is there something that you want to add to this?
Yeah, we're talking about the shall not kill. And I'm going to give people a quote that was said by Joseph Stalin, which he was a ruthless dictator from Russia, which he attributed to that he had killed millions of people. He said in one quote, he said, "One death is a tragedy, a million a statistic." Let that sink in. One death is a tragedy, but a million is a statistic. Let me tell you what we've been sold. We've been sold that our empathy only extends in our inner circle, meaning that if something happens to somebody that you know, you feel it. It hurts you. But a million people die overseas, you care less about. Why is one death greater than the other? In the eyes of God, it ain't.
There were principles that God set into play for mankind. And those principles should never be violated. You know, there's times I wish that I could say, there's times I want to say that I knew this all these years. 55 years of serving the Lord. And I didn't know some of this until the last few years. You be angry with me for not believing in Jesus Christ all you want to. But the day you have the experience I have in God is the day you can come face to me and we'll discuss it. Until then, don't. I know who he is, and I know who I serve. And the God I serve is full of compassion, love, and mercy, more so than any man who only had a 3.5-year ministry. He's had millennia. He has millennia of his love, compassion, and mercy being shown forth to mankind. Let's refocus our attention to the one true God of the universe. Do I need to give him a million names? No, but I can give you a million reasons why I love him. And I will serve him with the best of my ability, with all of my strength. I hope you've got something out of this lesson today, and I know that he has sealed this message for you. Now let's do what we need and go forward and serve him with all that is within us. Stacy, in your hands.
Well, if you did not feel the powerful presence of God that was going through there, it was wonderful. And the message was wonderful. A lot of good points. So we thank you for joining us. We thank you for, continue to be an avid supporter. And if you have not got your Be Holy book or Fighting Hell, please look in the description and we can tell you where to get that information. Thank you. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, thumbs up, like. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you next time.